So we'll start now as it's 3 minutes past 12. So welcome everybody. Thanks very much for joining us today. As you will be aware, this is a follow-on session from last week's core assessment webinar. And the purpose of today's session is to give an opportunity really to allow centres to ask questions off the back of the webinar last week. We appreciate that some have classroom duties at the moment, so thanks very much for those for posting in the chat to say that you'll only be able to listen. We have recorded it. We are hoping that we can send the link out after the event, but we know what it's like with internal recordings and then sending them out to externals afterwards. So hopefully we will be able to send it out, but please do bear with us. So on the call today, joining me is Alison Whittle, who played a heavy part in the assessment webinar last week. So thank you very much, Ali. And Karen Egan. And Karen looks after the leadership and management side of things, which plays a heavy part in the occupational specialisms. And I'm technical advisor for business skills. So the generic business side of things. To do with the management and administration, so more around the administration side of things. So we have started recording now. The session will run till 5 to 1. Apologies, but we all have follow-on calls at 1 o'clock, and so may need comfort breaks, etc. in between. For the ease of Teams and bandwidths, etc., would it be extremely kind of you if you could potentially just come off camera so that everyone has the best quality where possible. So we're going to do the same. So we're going to open the session by looking at some of the Q&As from last week's webinar. And then what we're going to do is open up the floor to centres to ask specific questions. Now, it might be that we actually have to take those questions away and ask our assessment development teams, etc., in order to get you the correct response. So please do bear with us if we can't answer them all today. It is a large qualification, as you'll be aware of, and so there will be numerous different questions. So the first thing I'm going to do then is just start with some of the common questions that we get when visiting centres, and of course take into consideration those questions we received last week. So the first question I'm going to start with was, a centre highlighted the fact that the ESP actually covers the Easter holidays, and we are fully aware of this, and that's why 6 weeks has been granted. So we've got to remember, first of all, that the ESP is only 25 hours long. It's a controlled assessment environment, and it's up to the centre as to how you distribute those hours. Now, they need to align to the duration attached to the tasks. And so what we'd expect is actually a bit of a planning session occur first. There's lots of logistics to bear in mind here. So, for instance, if we take task one is broken down as a research question into 3 separate parts. And it actually consists of a 2-hour task, a 4-hour task, and a further 2-hour tasks. It would be very difficult for a learner to sit an 8-hour assessment in one day. And so what we'd expect is that you would break down those tasks into 1, 2, or 3 days. When you run those 3 days is entirely up to you, as long as it is in between that controlled assessment environment. So any time between the beginning of April and the 12th of May. So we are aware that some centres have Easter holidays 2 weeks prior to the bank holiday weekend, a week either side of the bank holiday weekend, or actually some centres start on Good Friday and then have 2 weeks. With this in mind then, you will still have sufficient time in order to cover the 25 hours controlled assessment. Many centres are doing it over a 2-week period. They're taking their learners off timetable, and they are planning rooms with facilities, etc. They are planning invigilators with exams, etc., over a 2-week period. And this should still give you at least 1 week contingency in case you have any learners that are off due to sickness. It also then allows you sufficient time to upload your evidence, which needs to be submitted by the 12th of May. So there is a couple of further questions off the back of that initial one. The first question being is, what happens if we have a learner who is off sick? Now, it's not initially as bad as we first thought. A learner can still sit a task if they've missed the original task during that control assessment environment. But obviously, they need to still do them in task order. That might mean that you need to bring in a learner extra when they are well enough, but providing they sit all the tasks before the end of the control assessment window, they are still eligible to submit their evidence. So the problem with that is you would need to obviously find further rooms that you haven't planned for, and indeed invigilators. So that's the first part of the Easter holidays. The second part is you need to upload that evidence as a learner whole. So what you wouldn't do is upload every learner's task 1 evidence first of all. You need to wait for a learner to finish all tasks, and then you will upload that one particular learner's whole evidence as one. We also had a question around the ESP to do with the duration. So we appreciate that actually some of the tasks are quite lengthy. And one of the questions was, are we allowed to schedule in a comfort break, or do we have to run this straight through? As much as we might come across as being quite cruel, we're not. You can allow a comfort break for learners, but obviously you perhaps need to let them all go at once, make sure they go to the toilet and then come back, for instance. It's not good practice to allow them opportunities to go away and discuss, etc. You're not going to be able to monitor that, but you can allow for a scheduled comfort break. So moving on, the next question we had was, do you know when applications for examiners are going to go live? The particular question said that they saw the team leader ones but didn't feel ready for that particular role. What I'm going to do now is just copy some links into the chat. Bear with me. And if you feel as if you are in a position to apply, feel free to click on the links there. There is a link for the Employer Set project. So markers for the ESP, and then there is a link to apply for markers which are required for the core exams also. Now, if anybody is feeling extremely positive, we also have vacancies at the moment for the T-level principal examiner. And so if you want to apply to be a principal examiner, you can also do that, and you can find the links in the chat there. The beauty of applying for any of these positions is obviously you will get an in-depth look at how assessments are carried out and how marking is carried out, which is potentially something that is lacking at the moment. So if you feel as if you want to apply for that, please feel free to click on the link and take your time and send in the appropriate evidence to support. Just looking through the questions now, we've got cannot see the presentation. There is no presentation, that's right. There's no presentation at the moment. So this is a Q&A session. So we're not presenting. This is off the back of last week's webinar. If you struggled to get the webinar, it should have been sent out to you automatically. If you struggle to see the webinar recording, if you drop it in the chat, then we can send you a link to view the webinar in your own time.
It doesn't seem to be on the website just yet, Dom. I've had a quick look. I saw the question come through.
Okay.
So, yeah, so we'll need to remedy that. give the IT guys a nudge.
Yeah, it should also have been sent automatically to everybody who registered. So please do check your spam inbox as well, as it may well have gone in there. So it was last Wednesday. So if you look for the date for last Wednesday, you may well be able to find it there. What I can do is also look at the link from Eventbrite, which is where it was hosted, and pop that in the Teams site as well. So if you bear with me.
I wonder if we had a problem because people have had the presentation but not the recording. It's a bit
So
odd.
it is. So that is a link to the recording there. So that is now in the chat. So if anybody didn't receive it directly from GoToWebinar, you can see the link there, and it means you can just click on the link, and it says if you want the video recording, enter your details again, and it should be sent to you. If you're still struggling, let us know, and we can try and find a workaround. So Annabelle's just put, hi, I have a question, please. Can parts of the Employer Set project be retaken if a learner has not passed a section? It's a very good question, Annabelle. The answer is yes, but it's not as straightforward as that. If the learner has not passed that particular section, what will happen is they will get a result for the overall ESP. You wouldn't be able to retake, first of all, retakes are done within another controlled assessment window. So any retake of the core or the ESP would be sat in October or November of next year. And if you wish, you want to resit the ESP, you can do, but you would need to resit the whole ESP. You couldn't just resit one part of the ESP. So you would need to make that aware to the learner. And the same with the core exams. There are two core exams, 2.5-hour papers, but actually the two core exams together assess the core as a whole. Now, it was our decision as an awarding organisation to break the core assessment up into two smaller exams, as we felt a 4 or a 5-hour paper would have been too heavy for the learners, which means if a learner does fail one core paper, but passes, say, core paper 2, and they want to resit, they can, but they will need to resit both core papers. They can resit to upskill, but again, there's cost implications in that, and they would need to wait for that core assessment window again in October and November. So what we're going to do now is have a look. If anybody has any questions, if you'd like to raise your hand, and we'll go to that that person, and we can get them to come and speak out loud. So, Alison.
Hi, Dom. Yeah. Just to quickly go back to Annabelle, just your question as Dom has explained it. The ESP is marked holistically, not task by task, and it is compensatory. So if they have done better got higher marks in one of the tasks, it will tend to compensate for if they haven't done so well. So there isn't a level at all. It's marked as one holistically throughout all of the 6 tasks. Does that help, Dom, a bit?
It does indeed. Thank you, Alex. Much appreciated. Okay, so we're now going to open the floor up. So if anybody does have any questions from centres, please do put your hand up and we'll try and address them. Don't be shy.
There's one from Jill here. Dom, is there an exemplar response for the ESP that would help guide us and also the learners?
It's a good question. So unfortunately, there isn't an exemplar ESP. There is an exemplar ESP which can be found on our website, but there's no exemplar response. That is something that will be coming.
Jeff, sorry, I'm in the middle of a meeting. I can't unmute it.
What are you using?
I'm on Teams. I'm right in the middle of a meeting. I just can't get the mute on.
I'll try and mute you, Debbie.
I think she was trying to unmute, which she had successfully done.
Okay, so unfortunately, off the back of that, there won't be an exemplar answer response this year. However, as the live assessments are then used, further ESPs, scripts, etc. for each of your learners will be given to you so you can standardise off the back of it. Sally, do you want to come off mute?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Sally.
So, hi, I'm probably drumming on about the same old thing here, but so I'm aware that we don't have any exemplars for the ESP, but the PowerPoints and the worksheets and the multiple choice questions have been very useful for the core.
Yeah.
But we could really do with some resources for delivering the ESP, and particularly finding the project initiation document a bit of a stumbling block for me. And I know from the Facebook group there are others on there that have mentioned that. So I know we can't have an exemplar, but is there anything you can point us towards that would help us to, I'm just conscious that I want to make sure I'm giving them the right information about what's being expected from each document that they've got to produce, for example, the project initiation document.
Okay. There won't be an exemplar PID, project initiation document, easy for me to say. This is something that we are going to try and address actually in our face-to-face network. So we're hosting 2 face-to-face networks, one on the 7th of March, one on the 8th of March, the first in London, the second in Wakefield. We are going to go into breakout sessions where centres get together and work through that PID together. So if you can make either of those, that would be beneficial, but there'll be nothing official that comes out as far as the City and Guilds template answer for the PID. I don't know if you can make that session, Sally, but it would be well.
I am actually down for the Wakefield one, but getting there is going to be a bit of a problem for me.
It's from Blackpool, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to try. It'll be the train, but it's quite a distance. So I was wondering if there would be an option to join online or to have something from that afterwards if I can't make it.
There's no online function. The logistics of that would be too difficult, but what I can do is gather together the outcomes from the day and share accordingly.
That would be great. I mean, I would prefer to get to come, so I'll do my best, but that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, we do need to be careful from our side as an awarding organisation that we're not providing sample answers because that's deemed as too supportive for centres. But if evidence is coming from other centres, then that is a bit of a workaround, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think what would be helpful is as well is in terms of going back. Sorry, I'm in the staff room and it's lunchtime.
That's all right. Yeah.
Is, you know, because we haven't got a textbook, and obviously from whenever it is Easter there'll be a textbook, and I'm assuming there'll be some guidance in there about what to put in the project initiation document. Just if you could point us to a textbook or another resource somewhere, that would be helpful, but I appreciate that's not part of your remit.
Yeah, okay. I don't know the content, if I'm brutally honest, Sally, about the textbook. It is an external textbook published by Hodder, so we don't actually know the content of it as yet, but fingers crossed. We don't know the release date either. Hodder did say Easter time, but we don't know when exactly. If we do hear anything from them, then we will obviously let you know. Sarah did say, will there be additional core papers and ESP sample materials? There won't be any more this year, but what will happen again was once the live assessments are used, these will then be available for the October assessment window. Off the back of that, not to put a spanner in the works, but some centres are actually holding out for the October-November assessment window in order to use that as their first attempt. It's not classed as a resit window, it's just classed as an assessment window. So centres can use any assessment window they wish in order for their learners to be assessed on the core. However, you've got to be mindful of, is it, how are you going to make up the time? Because obviously you've got 25 hours controlled assessment to deliver in October, November, as well as 2 core papers. So is that going to eat into your occupational specialism delivery? Or are you going to start the occupational specialism delivery in the first year after you've finished the course? So there's food for thought there. Any other questions at all?
Got quite a few in the chat, Dom.
Amanda, we'll just go to Amanda. Amanda's got a hand up.
Hi,
and then we can go to the chat. Hi, Amanda.
Yeah, sorry, I've just put it in the chat, but I just wanted to know, some of my students were asking me through the ESP, will they be assessed completely as an individual, or will there be any point where they're assessed as a group? So I think a few of them were concerned about that, so I wanted to find out.
Ali, I don't know if you can confirm, but they are assessed as an individual, aren't they?
Yeah, I assume, sorry, you're referring to the collaboration task.
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Yeah. So that what would happen there is it's all about them working, that particular person working within the group. So if somebody else within the group doesn't contribute as fully as another person, then obviously that will reflect in the marks that you submit and the recording that you submit, you know, that the examiner will see. So nobody will be penalised for somebody weaker than their skills within the group. Does that answer your question?
I think so. So when we're, because it's low control, isn't it? So yeah, I'll be in the room with them.
You'll be in the room, and they should have a name tag on them, and their candidate number on them, and a recording, a sort of a microphone, ideally placed in the centre. And what the task is looking for is collaboration, because obviously, part of that core skill is how do they work with other people.
Okay,
and
so
do they contribute?
Okay, that's fine. In terms of the microphone, I've got 33 students in one class. Do I just with the recordings? I know we upload those. We just obviously I'd need to get 11. I think it's in groups of 3, didn't it, on the previous one?
I would suggest no more than groups of 3. Yeah.
So I need okay, that's fine then. So I need to look at getting in that. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
The biggest thing I can give you a hint and tip on here, if this is all right, is please make sure before you set that task up that every learner should contribute, because if you do get somebody that's really quiet, they're going to be down mark for that. So it is about making sure that you train that group to make sure they do have some input into that session.
Okay, all right, I'll make sure I do that. Thanks very much.
Just before we go to Uzma, Jill said, how do we book onto the training on the 7th of March? If you bear with me. Actually, it's on Eventbrite. So what I'll do is I'll jump into Eventbrite and I'll find the registration link for both London 7th and Wakefield the 8th. As I do that, I will try and multitask. Uzma, do you want to come off mute? Hi, Uzma.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. My question would be that if we are going to hold that meeting, would that just be limited to PID document, or would that give us an opportunity to go through the entire EmploySit project task and the marking scheme that goes along with it? So what to expect? What's the structure really of that meeting?
So are you talking about the London and Wakefield?
The London one, yeah.
Okay, so initially we're going to go through some generic stuff because it's not sector specific. So construction, BSE, management and admin, engineering, land. It is open to all sectors. The first hour will be generic, preparing for assessment, etc., hints and tips, etc. And the last couple of hours after a break will be sector specific. Now, we have a rough agenda for that, but what we can do is go with the majority. That agenda is flexible. So depending on what the majority want on the day, we can adapt to suit.
Okay, thank you very much. That's extremely helpful.
I have just opened Eventbrite now. It is taking a little bit of time.
I've just put in the chat, Dom, if that's okay, some guidance there for the ESP, and I'll probably be touching on that as part of the recap that I'm going to be doing. So in other words, I'll be looking at the marking grid. Even though you don't mark it yourselves, it just shows you how those marks are gained and where to focus the teaching on. Is that okay, Dom?
That's great, thank you. Okay, so I've managed to locate the London and Wakefield registration. There are limited spaces. I think we're about a third full already. And bearing in mind it is open to all sectors. So if you are available on those particular dates and want to attend, please feel free to sign up there. It is free. Obviously, you just need to get there. We appreciate that London and Wakefield is not ideal for everybody, but we're trying to do a north and south to try and make it as even as possible. Okay, I'll go back to the chat. The recording will hopefully be available, Uzma. The only issue that we may have from this session is that it's an internal Teams meeting with externals in the lobby. So we're hoping to get the recording and send it out. But sometimes Teams doesn't allow us to do it when externals are on. But it is recorded. So hopefully we will be able to share that. Annabelle said one of my students has ordered the textbook and told me that they were sent an email to say it'll be ready in May. Okay, well, that's actually new to us, is that, Annabelle? So if that's what you've heard from Hodder, we'll have to take that as the release date. Okay, is there any other questions at all?
Let me answer Alex's question, please, if we haven't already.
Can you see that, Ali?
I can. So Alex has just asked, just to clarify, if they want to resit, they don't have to resit all of the core and the ESP. They can resit either the core or the ESP. So the core is the ESP, actually, Alex. So in the core assessments, there is one exam over 2 different papers and the ESP. So all those things, those components make up the core. So if they, in the first sitting, as it stands at this moment, they have to take all of the core, which is the exam in 2 papers, and the ESP, as in the first sort of series. When you get your results from those, please bear in mind they are compensatory as well. So they are all aggregated together on one uniform mark score before any grade boundaries are set. They follow an awarding process, so we won't know what that is until everything's marked. However, if you get your marks back and they fail the ESP, but pass on the core or do well in the core, the next series they can just take the whole of the ESP. However, it will be a different brief, same tasks but a different type of brief. If they pass the ESP and fail the theory exams, they obviously have to sit both papers because they contribute to one overall mark that is aggregated. They can sit to improve, they can, you know, and they will keep their original grade if they only sit one or the other. Please bear in mind there are cost implications for resits. Thanks, Dom.
Thanks, Tally. Well put. So I can't see any.
I think that answers Jackie's question. Can I just go through those? So
yeah.
I can see a lot more questions, I think, than you can for some reason. So I've just got another one here. Did I hear correctly? If the students fail one of the core exams, they have to retake both. So I'm assuming there, Jackie, that you're talking to the theory papers, which is one paper, one exam over 2 papers. So really it's just sort of split over. So if they fail the theory exam does consist of 2 papers. Sheba has asked what the grade boundaries are. The grade boundaries are not set until all the marking is done, because it's used on a similar basis to norm referencing, where all of the grade boundaries are decided once the awarding process has taken place. The aggregated grades are set against a uniform mark scale, which is used as a classical uniform mark scale. Then using that, the grade boundaries will be set depending on the bell curve of what happens on the awarding process there. Just answering, do you mind if I work through this, Dom? Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Is that all right? Because I don't know if you can see it. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, maybe you have. If no exemplar is there for the ESP, can we have some additional guidance on what students need to include? I've put a link in there which gives all of the information of the type of evidence that they need to include. Obviously, we don't know the brief yet, but what you've got is sort of what type of evidence that you're going to be needing to include for that. I've got one from Melissa here. How would extra time awarded to learners who are entitled to this based on their learning needs be allocated per task? So that would follow JCQ guidelines there. So you would put in a special consideration form, which is, I think it's on our website, Dom, anyway, and that will be submitted, yeah. And that's all you would do, and that will just be allocated to those learners there. Are the questions from Sheba going to be similar to the worksheets you have provided for us? Dom, I'm going to have to hand that one over to you because I've not seen those worksheets. I presume, Sheba, you're referring, if you can come off mute, you're referring to the theory core exam papers?
She may be referring to the formative assessment that's given as free as part of the schemes of work, PowerPoints, etc., but I'm unsure.
I don't know whether you can come off mute, Sheba, just to clarify that for us. Okay, we'll move on.
Okay, no problem.
Case.
Uzma.
I've written down my question in the chat window as well. So the question is around the template for question and answer for the task of individual presentation, where the tutor has to ask 3 questions at the end of it. Is there a specific template that we need to fill up those questions on, or can we just use a blank sheet of paper to do the written recording of question and answers asked, and then send that along with the video recording of it?
I don't know the answer to that, Uzma, if I'm honest. I don't know what Wave 2 did, Ali.
Okay.
Any ideas?
Hi, Uzma. Yeah, the questions are, you're given guidance on the questions. So am I right in assuming you have those 3 questions, because all learners must be asked the same? Yeah?
Same question.
Yes.
So yeah, that's fine. So
that.
You would have a printout of that, and then you would record your response to that particular question for that learner and submit that as evidence.
That's right. But the question is there a specific template that is, because every awarding body sometimes give us those templates on which they want us to do these answers to be recorded on. So if there's
not
no
that I'm aware of, not that I'm aware of, but
we can just write down the answers that are provided to us by the learners when we ask these questions on any blank sheet of paper, and that's it, really.
Yes, as far as I'm aware. What I will do is take that back, Dom, and just check, because if there was going to be any templates provided, they would already be up there now.
They would.
Yeah, so if there's no template there, so as long as you record, ask the question, type the question out, and then record the response to that on a piece of paper, that's perfectly okay. But what we would say is, can you please clearly identify the candidate as well that you've asked that question to and recorded the response? Thank you.
No worries.
It might be worthwhile as for that once you've done it for one, you use the same template yourself. So
exactly.
if you did it once in Word, you'd literally change the name, because bearing in mind you're asking the same question. So
yeah, we would.
I'll work around. Yeah.
No problem.
Jackie.
Hello.
Hi, Jackie.
Yeah, hi. Sort of following on from that, I've typed it in the chat. So, you know, the presentation, and then there's the 15 minutes, isn't there, of Q&A afterwards?
Yeah.
So would we carry on recording that?
Yes.
Presumably.
Yes.
So, because if we're writing down their answers and they're talking for 15 minutes, that's a lot, isn't it? But they've got the recording, so I'm a bit unsure.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware, you would continue the recording of the presentation and the responses as well.
And we've got to write it down.
Is that right,
Yes.
Ali?
I'm not. The questions that you're asking is in after the presentation.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, it's different.
yeah. So it would normally just be on the recording. So just let me check that. I thought Uzma was referring to the separate task, yeah, where you ask 3 questions. Let me just go back into your spec and say, because no, it's the 15 minutes that your question would be the recording that you would upload.
Okay, so I'm thinking they present 15 minutes, then we have to. I thought the 3 questions were the 3, you know, in the 15 minutes we have to ask each student 3 questions and the same question.
And I think where
and that's the Q&A.
Yeah, just let me go back and check, because I think when it says those questions have to be recorded, I think that is literally recorded.
The recording.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than the writing it down, I would imagine.
No, I was of the impression there that was to do with others in the group responding, but if we can double check that.
Yeah.
I thought Uzma was relating to a different task.
Oh, okay. The collaborative task. But isn't that recorded as well? I thought.
I think I'll just get some confirmation on that.
May I come in here? I was referring to the individual presentation task 1.4, whereby the students get to present for 15 minutes. Then at the end of it, we would be asking them questions. I presume that if some students may not use the entire allocation of 15 minutes to answer 3 questions, some may want to give us more detailed answer. The reason why I asked about the template is because, yes, my understanding is we would be recording throughout till that student's time is finished after the question and answer. However, if you want us to take down some notes in writing throughout that question and answer session. So my question was in regard to that template.
Okay, thanks, Uzma. I think Ali's just having a quick check now.
I've got it. I've put it in. I'm going to put it into the chat. Yeah, it is just a recording for there. What we have got to be mindful about, though, is that so the presentation that is the supervised, it's the controlled video recording of the presentation we want, which are the slides and the handouts and the answers to those here. So it's evidence. That's the evidence we require. So I'm just looking on here. No, it's just, I think you just got to make sure you ask those same 3 questions. Why I think that's slightly different is that learners don't have to use handouts, and they don't have to do a PowerPoint presentation. They can use whatever sort of, although we recommend that, but learners can present in any format they want. So that's why we may be having to submit written notes if they haven't already been recorded or you haven't got them on the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just recording. Yeah, there's no, you don't have to write the answers down. That's yeah, I've just gone through that. I'm sorry, Uzma. I thought you referred to a different task. Unfortunately, every ESP is slightly different. This is pretty straightforward, fortunately, the business one.
So off the back of wave 2, so the T levels came out in waves, and we are part of wave 3 for management and admin. Off the back of wave 2, construction and building service engineers, some of the hints and tips was that actually the recording didn't pick up all of the audio. So work evidence was submitted where it was unhearable. Really, it wasn't legible. You couldn't hear what the evidence was around. So it might be that you record them written in a written format as well, just to back up the recording. But what we would say is you do need to check, even if it's just to listen to the first minute of every recording and the last minute to make sure that it's picked up everything. The last thing we want to do is to be disadvantaging the learner because the audio didn't work. But well worth checking before you upload. Have I missed any others, Ellie?
There's just one here from Amanda, I think. I'm not sure if you've answered this while I was looking at that. How many people need to be present during the recorded presentation? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, Amanda.
Sorry, I'm afraid I'm not too well as well at the moment.
Oh, bless you. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm referring to, so as I was saying before, I've got a class of 33 and that's all in one classroom. Obviously, them sitting through 33 half-an-hour presentations, if I have to have the whole class there, it's going to be, logistically, I don't think it'll be a good idea. So it's just if there was like a minimum number of people to having watching the presentations, and I can divide them up into groups. So just to try and understand the logistics a bit more.
You can divide them up into as you see fit.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a problem, because realistically, as long as you're in the room and you ask those questions, that's absolutely fine. I would be splitting that into groups as well. One is to get them used to sort of presenting to an audience. So if you were looking at groups of 4 maybe, or 3 and including yourself 4, that might be better, because that's not a problem. That's just a recommendation from me, that and you'd have them all on consecutive days and set other people off on a different task. You may want to do it, but 33 times listening to 32 people listening to a presentation is never going to work, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So that's why
that's completely
yeah, that's fine, thanks.
Ali, just to confirm, is there a requirement, let's say Amanda was in the room, is there a requirement as well for another person, such as an invigilator, to be in the room at the same time?
No, because it's a controlled, the ESP is under controlled conditions. So the person in the room would normally be the actual tutor. It's not the same as invigilation. There is no invigilation for an ESP. It's purely controlled conditions, which means it has to be timed. Obviously, they are sitting there, it's usually sort of in a classroom-based environment rather than anywhere else. The biggest thing to remember when it's invigilation is that work has to be handed in and kept securely between each of those sessions. So they can't walk off with the work and hand it in next time. So that's the biggest thing with invigilation, is controlled assessments as opposed to invigilation. But no, there doesn't have to be an invigilator there at all.
Okay,
sorry, can I just before you carry on, Dom, just on that, is everything done electronically? Do they have any paper notes at all as well? Is it all electronically online or on Word or whatever, PowerPoint?
For the presentation or for the whole of the six tasks?
The whole of the 6 tasks.
It will be paperwork that you submit. So they will be typed up and it will be sort of obviously handouts and things. So you would probably take those as, if they hand it in electronically, say on a Word document, it's not going to be very much handwritten. You'd convert that into a PDF maybe to upload it.
It wouldn't need to be submitted electronically, Amanda.
It would definitely be submitted electronically, or it could be scanned if the learner's handwritten it or something.
Great.
Obviously, you just need to be mindful of the legibility of any handwriting if anyone prefers to do that. I'd probably recommend it typed on Word, if I'm honest, but entirely each to their own.
I would as well, Dom, and the reason I'm going to say this to you is out of the ESP, learners are marked on the accuracy of their work. So if it's illegible or handwriting, that they could lose some marks. So that's just a hint and tip for you.
So that goes back to the previous point about invigilation, goes back to me erring on the side of caution, saying potentially you might want to get another invigilator in, but obviously that's not the case. So that is good news for centres logistically, that a tutor on their own can obviously run the controlled assessment. So there's no requirement there for a further, say, exams officer or
it's only for the ESP, Dom, for the core exams.
Of course, yes.
They are invigilated,
yeah.
the core, yeah. Theory exams, sorry. Theory exams are invigilated. The ESP is controlled.
Sally says, would they be allowed to practice their presentations outside of the time, or does that need to be included in the assessment time? I think there is allocated time there, Sally, for learners to practice prior to doing it. I think that's highlighted in the guidance. So I believe, yes, they can practice. Obviously, they can't practice outside of their the task duration, because that would mean taking their evidence outside of the classroom.
Yeah, I think I had a conversation with somebody else at another college about this, and they were setting up as part of that assessment time a room for practicing before they come in and deliver the real thing. And I suppose I was thinking about doing that, but it's the logistics and the staffing of that, because they would have to have a member of staff there, wouldn't they, for that?
They would, and it's perfectly acceptable to do that, because your assessment doesn't start until those 3 hours. So, you know, until that sort of they do their presentation. So if they've written their presentation task and they want to just go through it, that's what you have to do within that time. Then it's a 15-minute presentation and 15-minute questioning.
So you just got to allow for 15 minutes for them to practice out of that assessment time. Yeah, okay.
Not
all right.
Before they actually present to you.
Before the start of that 15 minutes, yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, got you.
Okay, any other questions at all? Catherine.
Hi, thanks. I did put it up earlier in the chat. It's to do with the plan on a page. I was just querying the thing that says about it being a spreadsheet format. Is that to do with Excel then? Is that what people mean by the spreadsheet format?
Yes, you can use Excel, yes.
Is there any kind of exemplar to show what it would look like? Or,
there isn't, no. As long as it's, we've had this query before actually, it was whether or not learners had to use tabs, etc. They are assessed against the digital aspects of the core skills. So obviously it needs to be professional throughout, clear, etc. as to what the evidence is showing, labelled accordingly. But yes, you can use Excel. That's absolutely, that's recommended as the preferred software.
Right, but no sort of software to do with project software or anything like that?
There's no requirement, no. You can use Microsoft Project if you wish, but the problem with using Microsoft Project is the file type. So it needs to basically be accessible by an external. So it might be that if it's, I can't remember the file type which Microsoft Project produces actually, but it might be that it would be beneficial to save it in a PDF or something like that, if that's possible. I'm not familiar with Microsoft Project itself and how it would help here, but some centres have asked if they can use it, and they can, providing they follow the file type rulings, which is in the handbooks. I think it's things like MP4, MP3, PDF, Word doc, Excel docs, etc. So the standard kind of Office. Now, obviously, Microsoft Project is a Microsoft product, but I'm unsure on the actual file type that it creates.
But there's no template as well to be used, like the PID. No. They all have to be slightly different. Is that right?
You couldn't support the learner to say you all need to do it like this because that's too much guidance.
Right.
It would be up to the learners to how they present it.
Okay, thank you.
A couple more questions, Dom, in the chat. I don't know whether you can see. We've got another one, I think that's from will there be, from Gemma, will there be any occupational specialism training? Yes, I know. Dom, you can answer that one, can't you? Because obviously that's a whole new set of.
It is. Gemma's definitely jumping ahead of the game there and far too proactive for my liking. Yes, there will be occupational specialism training. Obviously not at the moment. Not the concern, but the focus is on core this year. But as we get past the core assessment window, the initial core assessment window, there will be further occupational specialism training. Yes. If you keep an eye out on the events and webinars page towards the end of the year, that will highlight the start of the OS delivery.
Complicated question now. I don't know whether you want to take this or do you want me to answer it? It's from Amanda. Sorry, Amanda, I don't know how much we missed this before. And that was, do we have any rough grade boundaries that would allow us to set something for students to work towards?
No, we don't, do we? Really, I mean, there are the band descriptors, aren't there?
There are the only thing I can suggest, because no one's sat the exam yet, Amanda, and that's the thing, and the grade boundaries can't be published until they've gone through this awarding process. So then, of course, what will happen is as soon as those grade boundaries are set from the first series, you will have the results of what they are. What I can share with you is what they were for wave 2 on the very first exam series. Now, obviously, building services engineering is completely different to management and admin, but it gives you an idea. I don't know whether, can I share screen at all, Dom?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Would you mind, everybody, if I just sort of shared with you what that looks like there? So, please bear in mind that this is, an A star to E boundary there. So you can see the mark range within that. So an E for that paper was 32 to 38, 28 to 34, and they were the raw marks. So that means they're out of 90 or 100. I think yours are 100, Dom.
That's right.
If I'm not mistaken. So that would
That's
be 32 to 38 was on the UMS score. Within the mark ranges here is on this one here, which is the UMS scale, and the second one, and these were the actual. I think it must have been 100 and 100 and is it 110 yours or is it 100?
100 for voice,
right.
Yeah.
So what happens with the A star? It's obviously an uplift of the top 10%, isn't it, to give them to that? So these were the grade boundaries set for the very first series. Now, as a teacher with a brand new exam, I would have always taken, and this is just my pure advice, I'm just going to stop sharing now. My pure advice would always be to aim for 50%. It's not going to be 50% for a pass. For an E, it's going to be lower. But if you look at the same sort of, if you look at a criterion grading type model, at least if you've gone full 50, then, and you look at the grade boundaries for your very first exam, which I think are only released, is it a month or two after the first series, Dom? It's quite quick, isn't it? And then all I would do is take the grade boundary from that first exam, and I would always add 10% to whatever that was. Now, it may go down as well as up, but just as a rule of thumb, it doesn't tend to go up higher than 10%, because obviously, but again, because it's an awarding process, the grade boundaries will differ for every exam series depending on the strength of the submission by that particular cohort. Is that any help at all, Amanda? Probably not. I've probably confused things even more now. I'm sorry.
It does help. Obviously, it's a bit different for me in an AO position, but I think that highlights for me. Sorry, I am conscious of time. We're 2 minutes over, so we will nip it in the bud. But that, for me, highlights exactly the reason why we can't release the grade bound approach. The other thing to remember that if anyone has quickly used their mouse and screenshot that is that construction, that was for construction, wasn't it, Ali?
It's for building services and engineering. It's nothing to do with us. I did say that very clearly. So, it's got nothing, and it's published on the website.
So we've got to remember that their marks allocated is not 100, is it? It's 110, I think.
110 is there, yeah.
So we can't take that. We need to take that on face value. We can't take that as gospel.
Yeah, it was just an idea.
No, absolutely, yeah. So it does give a good indication of where learners need to be at. But that's why we don't release grade boundaries.
Yeah.
Prior to assessment.
Very last question, if you can just point the person in the right direction. They want to know how much are the costs?
No idea whatsoever. Who said that? Who asked that? And I will get back to them.
That was me, Annabelle.
Annabelle, what I'll do is I'll have a look or speak to our sales team and see if they can find it out, and I will.
It should be on the website. It should be on the website under exam fees and registration.
Might need to look in Walled Garden, but.
I'll have a look. Thank you.
Okay. Apologies. It's 12:59. We all do have further meetings at 1 p.m. So just to round it up, many thanks for attending today's session. We hope you found it useful. If you can join us in London or Wakefield, it will be beneficial. And if anybody is interested in applying to be a marker of some description, please do look in the chat for the links to apply. Look out as well on events and webinars page for City and Guilds events and webinars page for any upcoming other events, whether they're online or face-to-face, and we do hope to see you there. Many thanks and have a good rest of the week. Thanks, Ellie. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks. Bye. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.